Okay, we are now in challenge number 9, and now we're going to change things up just a little differently. We are going to use the multiplication math operation. And then when we get to 13, 14, 15, and 16, we'll be doing some division. So with that being said, this is a little bit different than how we're typically taught in the classroom regarding what the multiplication sign looks like. In code, the multiplication sign is the little star, which we call the asterisk, okay? So it's not the X, and that needs to be clearly identified when you're writing code. Now, when we're in lower grades, we're looking at, 3 times 4 with that X in the middle. Well, that X in code, it can't be printed that way. It just can't be executed onto the code structure. So we have to use a different symbol. And so here on forward, even if whenever we're writing code, I want you to reinforce with your learners that we have to use that little star. And right there, it's above the number 8. So when you actually get to the computer, you have to hit the shift key and the 8 key, and that to put that asterisk right where you want it. And of course, I will show you that when we actually get to the code. So this time we're going to multiply two numbers. We're going to multiply 5 times 6, but we're going to store those numbers in num1 and num2. This time, instead of using the sum or diff variable names, we'll use the prod, P-R-O-D, for product. One number times another number is a product, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, when we get to division, that's a quotient. Anyway, let's get there first. So again, we'll take a look at this from the pseudocode and flowchart perspective. And the pseudocode, again, still structured the same way. So we're using the same structure and the same sequential flow in terms of display, store, act, display, stop. So as long as we get that sequence of events down and your students are becoming very fluent and very comfortable with that sequence, then we're good. Of course, I'm going to challenge you, and then hopefully you're going to challenge your students to kind of do things a little bit differently moving forward. I'm going to keep my video tutorials the same, but then show you that certain things can be adjusted, but as long as you're following a logical sequence of events, your code is going to work. And that's really what we want to be able to do. So our code in this sense over here is storing 3 numbers, multiplying those 2 numbers together, and then displaying the output. So with that being said, let's take a look at the code itself. And so from this perspective, I'm pulling from what we talked about in Code Challenge 7 and Code Challenge 8, that I'm changing where I have my variables stored. So in the code that I wrote, they're down here, okay? But way back in Code Challenge 8, I said I could actually create this before I create any print statement, okay? Because the code, the computer is going to read these things sequentially, but the output is going to be the same. So I'm going to go back up here and again, put them up there. So I have a num1, a num2, and this time I need a product, P-R-O-D, okay? Now, this has num1 times num2, and now I want to show you what's really important when you start looking at and creating variables and everything needs to be consistent. Look at what I have here. I do have num1 and I do have num2. And they're both numbers, of course. And now I have a product. And then down here, I'm going to show, because this statement says this program multiplies two numbers, and that's exactly what I want it to do. However, I'm printing out what those two numbers are, num1 and num2. Now down here, I have the math operation. It works perfectly fine, num1 times num2. However, there's a problem. And I'm going to show this specifically because eventually you're going to want to put your students in front of computers and have them execute the code that they've been writing and practicing for whatever amount of time that you've been practicing. You have to be really clear as to what's being typed in or inputted into your code. I have the word difference here. difference, and then I've got difference down here. So what does that mean? I have all this up here, and then I have this down here. Now, that would mean that this difference and this difference are the same variable. And despite the fact that it's the same word and I'm doing a math operation, I will get an output of this number times this number. And it will never look at this number right here because I never use it in a display statement, okay? However, so let's run that and let's take a look at what I'm talking about, okay? Because I'm using this variable name as the math operation assignment, and then I'm printing that same variable, I am going to get the output. However, what if I forget to change that? So let me change that to what I really wanted to show. I want to show the product. I want to show this variable up here, okay? And I just simply forget that this is here. If I do that, and I run the program on the computer, I'm getting this output. Even though I have a math operation, the display, the line of code that should say display or print or say, and in our code when we wrote it, it's display. Display to the screen what it is I want to display. So when you're actually thinking about the variable names, you have to be really clear of where they're being used in your code and making sure that you're displaying what you want to display, okay? So in order for this to work properly, I have to reassign this variable. So this now has to be that, because that's what I want to use. That's exactly the variable name that I want to display the outcome or the result of my math operation. So if I run this, I do get the expected display output based on the code structure. So again, stuff learning, good stuff, and I'll see you next time.